Bird up.
So eldenring Nightreign finally came out. And to start us off here, can I just say how glad I am that this game isn't bad? I'm probably not the first person to tell you that it isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but consider just how many games like Nightreign are made that have things like microtransactions, or other live service type things like fear of missing out through way of a battle pass, or, you know, just other ugly, stupid stuff that nobody really wants to see, ever. I'm sure you can gather with just that statement alone, I'm kind of a big fan of Nightreign so far. This video is going to be about a lot of things, particularly my thoughts on the game as it stands currently, but mostly what I want the main takeaway to be is that what Nightreign does is sort of an interesting paradigm shift for the Souls series going forward. I, like many people, have worries and fears and criticisms to express, but the real point of this video is going to be what we can learn from Nightreign as a game, what it does to the Souls-like genre in terms of creative liberties and such, and what kind of lessons this game can teach us in terms of being a fun and enjoyable Souls-like experience.
You do not go towards the dragon. Do not. Do not. Do not.
Caca, bitch! Got it.
Nice. What is it?
Nothing?
Maybe a truck back here?
Just a fair warning here, the scripting for this video is going to be a lot more fast and loose than what I usually do because I mostly just want to play Nightreign again, I'm gonna be honest. Well, that, and then also, there's a lot of people that already have opinions about Nightreign, and odds are this is not the first video you've seen discussing the game. But just in case you have it, I guess we can start with some of my complaints immediately. So with all the talk surrounding the game, I think it's safe to say that this might be the most divisive title in FromSoft's library. In my opinion, the discourse surrounding this game is even bigger than a game like Dark Souls 2, which is made doubly interesting because of how colossally divisive that game was. So why are so many people mad? Well, a lot of it has to do with fan expectations, as well as people just being kind of jaded with the whole online multiplayer first video game space, and most of the problems people have is pretty reasonable, admittedly. Many would-be Nightfarers, including myself, was maybe expecting something a little bit more like Risk of Rain 2 but Elden Ring. Running around a roguelike open-world environment, eventually getting stronger and threatening to crash your game with just how powerful your character can get. But that's really not the case here. I feel like a lot of the stats and a lot of the general build crafting that you can come across in this game is a lot more conservative by nature, and there is some amount of that that's pretty disappointing. This point also rolls very nicely into another thing that I want to talk about, and feel free to make fun of me on this if you want to, but I genuinely think that doing a singular run of the game is too hard. There are surrounding issues with why I even say something like this. A lot of it has to do with the enemy AI being way too aggressive, especially if you're playing solo. This is a multiplayer-centered video game first, so it stands to reason that picking a single-player option would be something equivalent to like a hard mode or something, and okay, fair. It's just that I find a lot of the boss enemies specifically way too evasive and way too aggressive. If you dare decide to use like a slower, heavier weapon, or anything having to do with the raider character for example, you're lucky to get even one clean hit off in, I don't know, a couple minutes of fighting the boss. And that's not something I'm a particularly big fan of, I'm gonna be honest. I like the revive mechanic on paper, but this also needs some tweaking. There's a lot of suggestions I could give that maybe might help, but a lot of it is on paper, and I'm not a game designer. What I would like to see is make it to where, you know, whenever you die a couple of times and you have those individual segments filled out, right? So then you have to rely on your friend to sort of start attacking you so that you can get revived. And then they stop attacking you and suddenly the entire ring fills back up again. My first maybe sorta change I want to see is have it to where each segment of the ring is sort of like a checkpoint. So you reduce one segment all the way down, your buddy is allowed to hold aggro or take a break or, you know, reposition or whatever, then they can go back and resume attacking you to revive you again. Again, I don't see any issues with that on paper, but we'll just kind of have to see what FromSoft does in order to alleviate this problem, if anything. That is, of course, assuming that they also see a problem with it, or other people express concerns with the revive mechanic. When regarding difficulty in this game as a whole, I find it kind of baffling that you have to be 100% optimized with both your playthrough and what items you get in order to even challenge the final boss at any given run. This issue is especially pronounced considering just how long these boss fights take. Regardless of whether or not you pick a character that's supposed to be a high damage character, I don't ever feel like I'm doing enough damage. Like, it really is two sides of an extreme. You're either fighting a really easy world boss that takes a couple of hits to go down, or you're fighting a boss at the end of the night that just doesn't take any damage, and why, though? Like, is it a me problem? Is there something I'm missing here? I will say the game came out roughly a week ago by the time this video uploads, and there are obviously some growing pains here. So there's a very high likelihood a lot of these points that I made will be rendered pretty mute by the end of, whatever dev cycle this game is on. Whether that be one particularly noteworthy update or sets of updates. If nothing else, FromSoft seems pretty prolific in terms of developing the game and, fixing whatever issues it might have, which is good. I'm glad that we're seeing that.
Look at how long my sheaths are, what the fuck?
Speaking of good things, I'm so glad that there's no purchasing you need to do aside from the base game itself. The Deluxe Edition doesn't offer anything gameplay-wise, and I'm so glad for that. It really is a rare thing to see nowadays. As soon as the game first came out, we also got a trailer for the Revenant character, and my initial knee-jerk reaction was, oh, so we have Day 1 DLC, only to look over on my other monitor and, oh, my brother is literally fighting the character and is about to unlock her. I'm still not sure why they decided to use an Evanescence song for that trailer, but sure, why not? And it's just all the stuff that I miss from, the good old days of playing video games. It's good to see here, and I don't really have any notes for it. There is legitimate player progression between runs, and this is good too, although I wish there was more of it. Whether it be the merc you can spend in between runs to build up your character, get more gestures, or get more options to build your character, or the individual character's side quests that make it to where you can do things like get a relic piece that you can use to freely customize a character and change up something about their playstyle. This is all really good stuff. It doesn't exactly take a rocket scientist to say that this is a pretty big departure for the Souls-like formula. And you know what, that might just perfectly lead us into the real point of this video. I still hold the opinion that Souls-likes as a genre is still rather budding. Kind of up and coming, right? And I understand that that's a pretty stupid sentiment to have, considering that this genre has been something in the throes of like 20 years through development at this point. Nonetheless, I still think it's newer than its contemporary genres. And with that, it's games like Nightreign that show us that there's still a lot you can do with the Souls-like formula. Which is the lesson I think we can all take away here.
Parried.
I can't believe I carried that. I didn't know you could.
That ass.
I struggle to call Nightreign a wake-up call. If only because I don't think this game quite has that staying power yet. If nothing else, it should probably teach a lesson to other AAA publishers. Why yes, things made with integrity and creative intention do in fact sell. But you and me, as players of video games, we knew that already. I'm talking more like the indie space. Or just Souls-like games that aren't made by From Software. One of my favorite Souls-likes of the past, I don't know, ever, is actually Remnant 2. Similarly, it's another procedural generation Souls-like game, but it does other things like mixing a third-person shooter aesthetic to the whole thing, completely changing how you approach combat and all that other good stuff. Nightreign, in a lot of ways, is an exploration of throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. Yes, it's a sort of stripped-down version of eldenring. It trims a lot of the fat, but the meat as well. But it does that to make room for other mechanics here. It's a battle royale, roguelike, Souls-like. Which is just weird, right?
That's a fucking rune bear!
And despite Nightreign not being directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, the real reason for that is the creative intent. What happens if somebody else were to steer the ship, so to speak? Whether or not you have a high opinion of Nightreign, I'm sure you can agree that this game is something else, for better and for worse, warts and all. I keep throwing around the term growing pains, primarily because nobody at this team who made this game at From Software has ever made a battle royale before. Or even anything roguelike as far as I understand. And with that, of course, you're gonna have some issues, including, but certainly not limited to, us having no duos option for matchmaking. The reasoning for that boiling down to, well, oops, we didn't think about that. And if that really is the case, then oops indeed. Can we see it already? Coolest thing about this point specifically, FromSoft kind of replied in this regard. Why yes, we're going to see duos eventually.
When we're fighting, they have different effects.
I'm leaving.
I just got...
I'm also leaving.
You
got Topo?
Why is the Augur here?
I see a lot of detractors for Nightreign talk about how this game is just a cash grab, right? And I can't help but be inclined to completely and 100% disagree with that statement. Yes, we're reusing assets, reusing models and animation in the world of Elden Ring. But newsflash, in case you weren't able to tell, we've been using the same straight sword animation for something like 15 years now. FromSoft is using the most memorable parts of these games to make something unique with them. People are mad about seeing characters like the Nameless King show up as a boss fight in Elden Ring. And I'm just gonna come out and say it, man, let them be mad. I'm over here fighting the Nameless King in eldenring, and I'm having a great time. Like, come on. I should probably wrap up this little rant and ramble as fast as I can. So I'll leave off with this. I want to see more stuff like Nightreign. While yes, I want to see Nightreign be improved and updated and some changes and such, I'm sure everybody does, I'm not saying I want more open-world, roguelike Souls-likes. Rather, I want to see more attempts at redefining an already well-known genre, changing formulas and making something completely new with those changes. There's a lot we can learn from a game like Nightreign. I already have a pretty decent feeling that those in the indie space are already looking at Nightreign and going, well, what can we do with that? And I'm excited to see stuff like that. If anything, I was excited to see Nightreign come out eventually because it means those in the modding scene for Elden Ring or other Souls games could take the aspects of this game and then reinsert it into other older games. I'm currently waiting for the day that we get to just grapple freely around Limgrave, because the Wilder exists now. Doing something as simple as giving us the ability to sprint surge around any of the Souls games would expedite a lot of the process of just walking around, getting from point A to point B. And even in the narrative side of all this conversation, having the ability to play as predetermined player characters with their own stories and own lore is also quite something to sort of leave the door open on. Throughout the entire time playing this game, I sort of feel like I'm exploring with an RPG party or a D&D party, and I'm gonna use the C word again, but I think that's really cool. We can have these characters use their little skills and eccentricities to further define the gameplay. And yeah, of course I want to see that being done more in other games. And I really could go on and on about this topic until the sun explodes, frankly. But I don't really have time for that. I want to play Nightreign. So let's go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video today, then a like, comment, subscribe, ringing the bell, and all that good stuff, always appreciated. If you're looking for somebody to play Nightreign with, then hey, why not join the Discord? We got members joining every day by this point, and I don't know, we talk and mess around and do all kinds of good stuff too. If you so choose, you can also donate $1 a month to the Patreon. Speaking of which, Patreon shoutout time. I'd like to extend a very special thank you to Stefan and Ari at patreon.com. If you would like to get access to sneak peeks before they come up on YouTube, early releases to videos before they drop on Friday, and or giving me the ability to shout your name out loud at the end of these videos, then like I said, joining starts at $1 a month. And yeah, that's all I got. Hope you enjoyed the video today. Hope to see you again Friday for something completely different. And as always, have a good day, everybody.